I want to bring up this article here from Salon.
Oh, boy.
Was this finally enough? Trump and his terrorist confederates must be prosecuted. Trump treason is trending, and treason is trending, and it's about Trump. And this is one of the articles. I don't care to read the article for the most part. It just goes through January 6th stuff. It shows people who testified. It says enough is enough. We've heard this. We know what Trump has been planning. Trump called for supporters, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter what the sentiment is beyond. You right now have prominent media outlets, politicians, demanding that the other side be imprisoned, prosecuted, shut down. They're irredeemable. I mean, we've heard deplorable, and that was a while ago. But now it's irredeemable insurrectionists. People have been
Christo-fascist.
Christo-fascist.
Whatever.
Deciding, yeah.
They're saying these people are. They're saying the other side is evil and we know it, and they have to be stopped. Mm-hmm. There's no negotiating with people who believe this.
No, you just have to beat them.
In what elections and then.
Well, you can beat them in the political process. Hopefully, that's the way you do it. Look, I mean, I in the book I talk a lot about ancient Rome, and there's some parallels there. You know, instead of fighting, up the course of honor to become consul or questor or whatever, it's a lot easier just to, charge your opponent with treason, get him out of the way,
right,
and chop his head off.
Using the law enforcement apparatus to go after people, and this is what the January 6th committee is. But is it? Will Republicans ever do anything? Of course they won't.
I don't know. I think that when John Cornyn collaborated on the stupid gun control thing, there were 14 other Republicans who joined him. 15 Republicans, right?
What, 10 the
years
recent thing?
On the recent gun
the bipartisan
thing, right? 15,
whatever.
The bipartisan sellout thing, safer communities, and then
total
of course,
garbage.
Then of
total
course,
garbage.
There's a killing the next day.
Yeah, of course.
It would have been 35 10 years ago. The Republican Party, because there has to be a party of the right. And the party of the right is going to be ascendant because of the insanity of the left. Although I'm not sure it looks like insanity to normals. To us, it looks like a plan. And also their failure to run the institutions correctly. $7 gas, just intolerable. They're moving to the right, and the Republican Party will become more conservative. And the Democrat Party is going to face a choice between going even more hardcore progressive or doing what they had to do after 8 years of Reagan and 4 years of Bush 2, which is go more moderate. It's a 50-50 government. It's always 50-50 because there are two parties. The Democrats, unless they want to be out, as long as they don't want to be out of power, they're going to have to moderate. If they're happy to be a rump resistance and let the right wing rule, then they won't have to change.
I think the issue is the younger generation is particularly more partisan and more zealous on both sides.
Yeah, but that's always true.
So why would someone whose worldview, Matt Walsh, for instance, to go back to what he said, that we don't agree, I despise them, they feel the same way about me. It's one thing when it's the 90s and you can see the political overlap according to Pew, and it's like moderate overlap in their worldviews. Today, it's completely disparate. Today, it's parents who are bringing their kids to drag shows and parents who think that's child abuse. The kids who grow up in these houses are never going to go and agree with it. I mean, look, when you get to the point where an old man in tidy whities is twerking to a little girl and they're cheering for it and waving to him, and the rest of the country thinks that's like a criminal offense, the kids who are raised in these environments are going to be even further away from each other.
Well, and they're not even going to know where to find it. They're not going to know where to find values or morals or something different than that. I was at...
on the left?
Yeah, they're not going to know where to find it.
Well,
the kids, where are they going to look?
But it doesn't matter.
Right, but
My point
they wouldn't
is, on
even
the left,
know if they wanted it.
They don't have them. They don't want them. They won't want them. They will grow up around all of that stuff, debauchery, and think this is fine. And then people on the right will have traditional American values, and they'll be like, these people are out of their minds.
I think the one thing that's missing is I think a lot of kids will grow up and think that it's not fine. Yes. And they're not going to know where to look to find the thing to fill that total void that's, just all depravity. They're not going to know where to look. I think conservatives have done a really poor job in saying, over the past 50 years, saying, oh, you don't want our values? Okay, you can do whatever you like, and not taking a stand and not saying, yes, we do need to have a moral structure. We do need to have this civil religion where we do have shared values. It's at the point now where when I talk to people, we don't even have the same value system. We don't even agree on how to conduct ourselves in public.
Well, Libby's right, because I do think there is the potential for the next generation to embrace actual real values. But it is, I look, here's my example. Remember 10 years ago when we were told that Latinx Americans were going to be the Democrats' way to future dominance, that this would be a subservient, poor caste that would forever belong to the Democrat Party, living on scraps from the Democrats. And lo and behold, 50% of Latinx, and I just love that word. I just love Latinx. Or is it Latinx?
Latinx.
Honey, what do you think?
I thought it was Latinx.
I don't know. Well,
Latino, Latina, Latinx.
Yeah, I'm joking.
I
just like saying Latinx.
I just like to see
Professor
somebody.
X.
I want to see a couple of
Latinx.
leftists fight it out with pool cues over the pronunciation. But regardless, the Latinx Americans did not cooperate. Half of them are now Republican, according to polls, because they didn't want this stuff, and they didn't want to be poor, and they didn't want to be subservient, and they didn't want to be serfs. And I think yes, we need to reach out to people because we've done a terrible job. Right now, the Republican Party is gliding along going, look at that desiccated old fossil masquerading as a president. Oh, man, that's great. He's terrible. We're going to win. But what are we offering?
We need to
What are we
offer
showing?
culture. We need
We
to
do need to offer culture.
Also,
and
God,
I
man.
think
And God?
Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
want. I don't want cults telling you what God is. You just got to feel it because it's there. It's vibrating.
Well,
it is
exactly.
judging. It is you. You're feeding it, and it's creating you.
we don't need to be ashamed of what we believe in. A lot of times it's like, well, I'm religious, but you don't have to be. Hey, I'm proud to be religious. Look, I tried tolerance in the sense that everything was okay, and now they're trying to groom my kid in kindergarten. All right, figuratively. I don't have a kid in kindergarten, but a lot of people do. And that's when the whole tolerance
They
thing
are
changed.
grooming kids.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
not trying to.
well,
They are actually doing it.
I
Well,
keep referencing
some
dude
kids
twerking for
resist.
a little girl.
But look, here, the thing is, we need to stop with this fake, everything is cool. Everything is not cool.
Well, I
Okay?
mean,
It is
basically-
not cool to have drag queens in schools, ever. I don't care if it validates you. I don't care if it's important to your emotional well-being. It's weird and it's creepy, and you're not grooming my kids. And
Conservatives basically embraced relativism.
yes, and that was a mistake.
That was a huge mistake.
Because what we're offering is the opposite of
Yes.
relativism. We're offering a set of values that is proven over time.
Which
And
will help you determine meaning in your life.
Exactly. And a set of policies.
Yes.
Look, we know how to fix crime. Rudy Giuliani did in New York City.
He did a great job.
Remember New York City in the 80s? It was crime city. We know how to fix the economy. Reagan did it and Trump did in a couple of years. Both of them had it booming. We know how to do this. How do you fix the border? We know how to fix the border. How do you fix the military? We did it after Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I was the beneficiary of it. I write about it in the dang book. We know how to do the policy stuff, but we need to get away from relativism. I'm not ashamed to say my values are better than the values of a bunch of weirdo perverts who are trying to go out and groom on kids. My values are much better than people who want to kill little babies. My values are better, and I'm going to fight for them.
I'm a big fan of utilizing science to prove the existence of God because I think that people of all persuasions can agree when you look through a radio telescope what you're looking at for the most part, unless you're blind, unfortunately, but we'll fix your eyes. And you start to see these frequencies moving in almost this intelligence of nature. Like it's becoming, even Einstein, I think the more scientific he became, the more he started to believe in God. I think by the end of his life, he actually believed in a God, even though he wasn't necessarily religious of any kind.
That was true with a lot of philosophers as well, who like Kant, embarked on this whole conversation about essentially saying that there wasn't really a higher power, but he himself believed, and he believed at the end of his life as well.
I think there's a survey that find like most scientists believe in God or something like that.
And then you have all the people who are like, there's no such thing as God, it's a simulation. And you're like, oh, Okay.
Then who made the simulation?
What, exactly.
Well, no, the argument, I love the simulation stuff because it's like the questions that philosophers and theologians have been asking for thousands of years are being asked for the first time by simulists who don't know they can find the answer to many of those questions in existing philosophy and theology.
Well, of course.
Or at least find the conversation.
Well, of course,
start from there.
And of course, they think they've been educated because they have a degree from an Ivy League university, and they come out and they are ignorant of their culture, their history, their past. If you're ignorant of those things,
well, because they
you're
learn.
going to be vulnerable to any nonsense.
What did Prager call it? Cut flower politics or something like that? Is that cut flower? Where he's like, you can snip the flower off from the stem in the pot,
Interesting
and
idea.
it looks beautiful, and eventually it dies.
Yeah.
It's cut from its roots.
Yeah.
I think because
Ooh.
these people have been emotionally disenfranchised, maybe through psychoactives and the water supply, plastics, God knows what, but like they need to see the math to believe in a God. Like they're the people that will put an arm in a frozen chamber to watch it get frostbite, to learn about frostbite. And those people need science.
That was
there's
that
an
was a
interesting thing
Japanese
because
scientist, wasn't it?
That's pretty
least.
crazy.
there's this crazy Japanese science fiction book where the guy eats himself methodically. Yeah, he's like a
Sounds like
cannibal,
Japanese.
and he just
Eats himself.
He eats himself one piece
Is
at
it
a time. But
very-
there's the
very-
it's very Japanese.
No, I was going to say it's a very interesting leap from the start of the segment on Trump being arrested for treason to
Right.
a guy eating himself.
Well, this
It's
is
not
actually
it's
a
not as weird as the
spectacular-
tentacle stuff.
This is
Yeah,
a
yeah, that's
spectacular
true,
book,
too.
actually. Like
Yikes.
a woman ends up criminally punished for having done something, and she gets planted in a park like a tree. And her family comes to visit her, and she's a tree, and eventually she's just this.
A tree?
She's a tree.
Okay, that's weird.
Are you talking about like
Roman myth.
Junji Ito stuff or something?
I don't remember who wrote it. For a while, I was really obsessed
Junji
with
Ito,
Japanese fiction, and I read like all of Kobo Abe, who I think is just stupid brilliant, like so amazing. But to your point about science, I was teaching catechism at my church for a while, and there'd always be like a couple kids who were there whose moms are just making them go, and they're like, I'm an atheist, Miss Libby. I'm an atheist. And I'd be like, okay, you could be an atheist. That's cool. God doesn't exist. There's no afterlife. And I'd be like, okay, so you're an atheist, so you're into science and stuff. Yeah, you know. And I was like, okay, so if energy can't be destroyed or created, what happens to your energy after you die? And that would always, and I mean, it's very simple. It's like nothing, right? And they'd always be like, oh, I wonder. And I'd be like, yeah, go wonder. And I'll see you next week, and we'll talk more about, the gospel according to Matthew. So
That's so. There's like a resistance.
So what is going to happen to bring it back to what we were originally talking about?
Well,
Trump.
we're looking for solutions. The
Insurrection.
off ramp. I think it's God. I
We
think
need
it's if people
meaning.
can
We
start
need
to
meaning.
believe
I
and
agree
feel
with
bigger
that.
than their own body.
But this is you're jumping so far beyond. It's like you may as well just say this problem will be solved once everything's good and the problem is solved.
Well, no,
like getting people.
There's
who
a
are
way
in
to
cult,
solve it.
Getting people who are in a cult to break out of that cult is the challenge.
But okay, the problem is when people try and do it by telling them Christian God, because they're very resistant.
But that's not what we're talking about. That's not what's happening. What's happening is beyond the religious. Now, certainly, these people are inferring religion on a lot of these issues.
It doesn't have to be religious.
But I don't understand what you're talking about. What does
I'm
that
talking
have to
about
do with
science. I'm talking
what
about
does that have to do with what we're
unification,
talking about?
conscious unification. We need to bring people together.
Okay, so let's slow down. You have a faction that's in a cult. You look at these journalists, like the NBC News team is fantastic. You run their Twitter accounts through ground.news bias fact checker, and it's like 100% left wing. They don't consume or interact with any news that comes from the right. None. So they're in a bubble. That's why they believe Kyle Rittenhouse lies, Covenant Catholic lies.
Yep.
That's why they believe Jesse Smollett. How do you get people out of a cult? Well, we know how. You have to physically separate them from the cult and then help them reacclimate to normal functioning society.
Or entice
The
them to
problem
physically
is-
separate themselves.
Well, that's literally what I just said.
You just said remove them. You said physically remove them.
Yes.
You could do that. You could take a kid that's in a cult and
this
put him
is-
in your car and drive away.
Bro, this is nothing. You're making.
There's
semantics.
multiple ways to get people out
The
of
point
cults.
is that people need to be separated from the cult. Period. I get it. You don't let's get the semantics out of there. So people have to be separated from the cult. The problem is they have cell phones, and the cell phones keep them attached with like an umbilical cord into the cult.
Interesting.
that's like Charlie Kirk said today, digital pacifier.
Yes. Whenever they're presented with information that would shock their system, they start breaking down and they retreat back to the cult and say, give me the things I need to believe. How do you break someone out of a cult when they're wired into it? That's the challenge. Believing in God is irrelevant. They're in a cult. You won't get them to believe in God or find anything or self-reflect or even take psychedelics. so long as they're in a cult.
Well, you can,
but they're wired into
you
it.
can alter the well of the cult. Like you can change an entire cult's belief system.
Well, that's what we're trying to do, right? I mean, that's sort of what we're out here trying to do. Like, hey, look at it this way, guys. Look at it this other way. You're looking at it from this.
They don't. They
very
won't.
biased
Remember,
perspective.
people-
And it can be a little bit of like. I got my mom to stop watching Rachel Maddow, and then I got her to stop watching CNN.
Nice.
And now she says things like, "I'm proud of you," and it's like, woo, woo.
Send
it's amazing.
all- my friends-
it's brand new.
Please, there is one thing you need to do to any one of your family members that is in the cult, that believes CNN, believes Brian Stelter. Don't get mad at them. Don't argue things with them. Just send them the Twitter video from Libs of TikTok of the old man in tidy whities twerking for the little girl. That's it. Just send them that. Say nothing else. And then just send them videos like that with nothing else. Don't say Donald Trump is good. Don't make points. Don't give your opinion. Just show them a video, because they'll pull it up without knowing what it is, and they'll press play and go, huh.
Remember, it's very hard to convince people, but people do convince themselves. A lot of people leave cults. A lot of people chose to leave Scientology. A lot of people chose to leave, was it Keith Raniere, the Nexium? Is that what it?
Yeah.
Nexium. They left. They eventually looked at it and it occurred to them, no, there's something wrong. So a significant number will leave on their own. We're talking the hardcore ones who are first in line to get the, get the Kool-Aid. But a significant number will leave, and a lot of conservatives are former left. I don't know a lot of leftists who are former actual conservatives. So the bulwark guys don't count.
The issue
They were
is,
just
No, they
frauds
don't
from the
count.
don't
beginning.
message your family members saying, hey, you need to watch this video for this reason.
Nope.
Don't do any of that. Because we learned this from Brandon Strzok. He said someone sent him a video. Now, in his instance, it worked, but he said someone sent him a video, and he was like, I don't want to watch it. I'm not going to watch it.
He has a really interesting story.
And then he said, you know what? I'll watch this to prove them wrong. And the video woke him up. So the issue is, when you send someone a video as an argument, many people will resist and be like, no, I'm not watching your argument. But if you just send a family member a video saying nothing, they might just go, what is it? And press play. And then they see a fat old man in tidy whities twerking for a little girl and people cheering and clapping for it. And they go, what is this?
It's
then
like
you can tell them what
you're
it
like,
is.
clear, and it's like their spirits like, oh my God, what have I been doing?
Here's what people need to understand. When we are growing up, we are building a worldview in our minds. And by the time we're around 24 to 28, our mind has solidified on our worldview for the most part. And this is a survival tactic in evolution, that if you have made it this long, what you did works, don't deviate, you have learned. When people are then presented with worldly information that contradicts their worldview, it is a threat to them, which is why they get angry and shut down or have panic attacks. We have heard it over and over again from people like Brandon, that when they were finally exposed to undeniable information, it was physically painful. They felt physical pain. It was like something was being purged from them. People will resist that pain like a drug addict, which means you have to be careful, tactful, and precise when you're talking to them, when you're sharing information with them. If you approach someone as an enemy, they will shut down.
Of course.
If you approach them as a friend, they will open up. So don't argue with your family members, insult them, listen to what they say and what they're concerned with, and then be like, wow, I didn't know that. Check out this video. And then just send them the twerking.
You don't have to
The
agree
twerking
or
man.
disagree too. You can understand something without agreeing or disagreeing with it.
Well, remember, you're not using argument in the traditional way. Look, when I go to a court, when I'm doing a case, I got 12 people, and they've got to sit there, and the judge will yell at them if they're not listening. So they have to at least receive it. Whether I can convince them or not is a different question. That's the power of my evidence, power of my presentation. When you're trying, Tim's absolutely right. When you're trying to convince somebody to get out of the leftist cult, you have to let them want to do it. And remember, there's a lot of pride, because if you find yourself in a position where you're defending tidy whitey guy twerking in front of kids, and you understand at some level that's bad, you're ashamed because you've done that. You don't have to rub their face in it. Let them come around.
Although
They got to talk themselves out of it.
a lot of times they don't want to, right?
it
Feels good to
yeah.
be in a situation where everyone agrees with
Yeah,
you.
but
and when you're
it is.
accepted.
For boomers, that tidy whitey video is like a giant red suppository.
Right.
No good.
It ought to be.
Quite the pill.
It's a painful wake up call for a lot of
Yeah.
people.
A lot of people didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah.
And exactly, we've heard that where people have told us like, oh, my family member says that's not true. That can't be happening. We had Richie McGinnis's mom, old school feminist.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here and I said, feminists are pro-war. And she was like, no, they aren't. And then I said, okay,
What's with all the
let's
Ukraine
clarify
flags,
that.
then?
The people who wore the pink pussy hats are substantially more likely to be the ones waving the flags of Ukraine, advocating for U.S. intervention in Eastern Europe into war. And she went, what? And Richie, her son, says,
It's true.
yeah,
True.
actually, that's true.
correct.
And she's older. And so I said, listen, I think the issue is you're older. You're kind of tuned out to what's going on in the world. And the younger generation is on the battlefront that you aren't watching. So you can't believe any of these things happen.
Seems
But you
crazy.
need to listen and watch and look through the window and see what's out your front door. And tidy whitey man is that cold slap in the face for the boomer generation.
Look, anything that involves kids is really going to be, the nitrous oxide that you add to the supercharger and the engine just goes way into the red. I mean, the idea that Virginia, which is a blue state, would put somebody named like Glenn Youngkin in, who is a fairly conservative guy. He's not 180 pounds of Miracle Whip stuffed in a $5,000 suit like Mitt Romney is. Okay, I mean he's actually
Miracle Whip is a great insult.
Yeah.
It's really nice. Yeah.
It's not even mayo.
Gross.
Mayo is a proud condiment. Miracle Whip. He's just so basic. But no, he's actually conservative, and the people of Virginia chose him, and the reason they did it was, kids coming home going, Mom, Dad, why are you all racist?
Yeah.
Well, this happened to me. This happened after the George Floyd stuff, right? And we were doing the virtual learning because of stupid COVID. And I heard an announcement on the classroom computer screen that there was going to be a 2-day lesson on systemic racism and white privilege. And I'm looking at that. I'm looking at my kid who I believe, 4th grade? Has it been that long? Who was like the only white kid in his class. We live in a very immigrant neighborhood in Brooklyn, which I like my neighborhood. And he was like, I was like, okay, I'm going to record this whole thing. I put on the voice recorder for the full 2 days. I wrote about it. But afterward, and I talked to my son about it, and he was like, Mom, we're racist. And I was like, we're not racist, honey. And he's like, well, or my grandparents are racist. I was like, they're totally not. My parents are not racist either. Well, our great grandparents are. We went through the whole thing, and I was like, your great grandmom taught at like integrated schools in Brownsville, Brooklyn. She was really proud of the work she did. Your grandma was a public defender in Philadelphia. She was like defending Eddie Africa and like all these guys. Like
of the Move guys.
The Move guys.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
from after the '78, the shooting.
Yeah, the bomb and everything.
Well, that was in the '80s. Yeah, but I was like, we're not only not racist, our family has a history of not really being that racist, like,
Well, look,
fighting
what are we
against it.
doing?
Yeah.
But-
Working to not be racist.
I was on with Prager the other day. He asked me an interesting question, in connection with the book. He's like, a lot of people will, accuse, Kurt, your family served in the Civil War on the Union side. Your hometown was burned down by the Confederates. You're obviously Northern European. People will call you racist, but you have this family history. How do you feel about that? And I said, well, I'm not responsible for my family. I don't get the glory of being part of the Union because that wasn't me. And I don't have blood on my hands because that also wasn't me. I what counts is the content of my character, and that's it. And that is the answer most normal Americans will give. And it's a very attractive answer.
Well, it's the American answer.
It
That's
is the
literally
American
the
answer.
American answer.
And normal people will respond to that if we get out there and say it. But there's so many people who are afraid to confront these little weirdos. I don't want to get called a racist. I don't want to get called a transphobe. I don't care what people who hate me call me. Don't care at all.
Should we have the government pay reparations to the descendants of people who died in the Civil War to fight for the Union? So if like your great grandfather was a Union soldier and he like kissed his wife goodbye and there's the baby and then he was like, I am going to fight this war to free the slaves and end this moral abomination, should the U.S. government be like, those people lost their lives and deserve payment?
Absolutely not. No corruption of blood, no glory of blood.
Well, that's the point.
I agree.
Yeah,
with
we
that.
have collective glory in the United States because we fought a giant war to end slavery. I'm proud of my country. as my relatives. My relatives aren't me. I don't get to go and like share. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
just so
You
stupid.
don't get
It's
the
like
guilt,
people
you
who
don't
believe
get
in
the glory.
loyalty.
Yeah.
I don't believe in the sins
ridiculous.
of the Father. You are an
No,
individual.
and
You make your own choices.
Neither does the the American Republic also doesn't believe in
Right.
the sins of the father. You're not responsible for your
But we're-
parents' debt.
It's
Like none
stupid.
of this.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.